voice. Well, but first of all, what is voice? Well, voice refers to a system or a grammatical category that let us know whether the subject performs or receives the action. Yeah? In Spanish, it is also called diathesis, and not only determines whether the subject receives or performs the action, but it also can support the process that occurs on it. One important aspect to assert is that English has two different types of voice, active and passive, while Spanish has three, activa, pasiva, and media. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about active voice. Well, Parrot 2000 affirms that in active voice, the subject of an object verb usually is known as the agent of the sentence. It means the doer. While in 2006, Bernard Dova affirmed that the subject is exterior to the process. In Spanish, active voice is also known as voz directa, and that refers to a subject that is linked to the perform of the action. Eastwood 2015 explained that a sentence should have a topic and new information, and in active voice the point of interest, the topic, should be and usually is the subject of the sentence, and the new information is the action that the subject performs. Well, now let's focus a little bit, on the other hand, into passive voice and voz pasiva. Well, in contrast to active voice, in passive voice, the agent doesn't perform the action but receives it. Okay, here I'm gonna place some examples, one in Spanish and one in English, of active voice, and the two different components that define the agent who performs the action or the receiver who receives the action, which in Spanish is called the patient. Okay? This is active voice. The first sentence, my dad buys a ring, has my dad as the agent and a ring as the receiver of the action, the object. And in Spanish, el policía arrestó al ladrón. The agent, the agente, is el policía, while the paciente is al ladrón. Yeah, who is the object and of the sentence. Okay. Now we turn these same sentences into passive voice, and we notice that the agent is still the same, but the place on the sentence changes. Equally happens to the receiver or the patient, that the same component has followed the rules and it is the same on the sentence. What happened is that it changed the order of the sentence and the emphasis that it focuses on. Here there are the sentences. A ring is bought by my dad. A ring is still the receiver of the action because my dad is the agent. And el policía, I'm sorry, el ladrón es arrestado por el policía. El ladrón is the receiver, the patient, and el policía is the agent of the sentence. Something interesting to add is that here we had to add these two components, por, and here by. That let us know who are the subjects that perform the action. Yeah. A similarity that English and Spanish have on the passive voice is that the agent complement doesn't necessarily have to be presented on the sentence. What does it mean? What does it mean? That the agent, being the complement, sometimes it's rendered unnecessary for the meaning or the new information that is presented on the sentence. Yes? Sentences like what? Well, here are some examples. One example in Spanish, it will be La casa fue construida. It is not necessary to say who were the agents of building the house, if it is important only to know that the house was built. On the other hand, in English, we can say this example. The bank was robbed. Yeah. Whether if the it is not enough information to know who did the action, well, the complement agent is not necessary to be added to the sentence. Yeah, it depends on the meaning and the emphasis the sentence can have. Some reasons not to use the agent complement into passive voice is because it is meant to hide who performed the action, or because it is wanted to have the sentence impersonalized. For example, in administrative or juridical texts. Also, it is because it is obvious who performed the action, so it is necessary to make it explicit. Some restrictions for creating passive voice in voz pasiva sentences are: one, that the active voice sentence must have a direct object. If not, passive voice can't be made. Another one is that reflexive sentences can be transformed into passive voice. Also, in the first person of the singular, I, it is not necessary or not usually transformed to passive voice. Why? Because what is said before, it is sometimes obvious who performed the action. And intransitive verbs do not accept the change to passive voice. In English, some formal written styles accept the subject it for some passive voice sentences. For example, using it with verbs like consider, believe, understand, think, say, because it makes the sentence to look more formal. An example of this fact is the sentence, it is understood that the rain comes because of the evaporation of water. This is an example of a passive voice that it is made because the it is being the receiver, and who understand that is the agent, but in this case it is a complement agent that is not necessary to explicit express, because it is really unknown also. Well, let's move on to this step. In English, some active forms have a passive meaning. This happens when there is a gerund after the verbs need, want, require, deserve. For example, this car needs painting. Yeah, the sentence is an active voice sentence, but it has a passive meaning. Now, let's finish by the Spanish factor, that is the media voice. Well, the voz media, by according to Bernard Soba 2006, it has both characteristics of active and passive voice, and it is when the subject is the same agent who performs all the process of the verb, who performs the action, and it origins, changes on the subject, has influence over the subject, and causes interest of the interest of the subject on the action. This is only in Spanish. Okay, some ways to understand to identify these media, these voice media structures, is when there is an animated subject. For example, the words se, me, te, nos, or os. For example, me caí, or with an inanimated inanimated subject, se, For example, se rompió el vaso. That sentence has voz media. Okay? But how these voice media structures are constructed? Well, it is necessary to have a flexible morpheme, because it is, as the subject is who performs the action, and is also it's the agent and who receives and who has all the process on the action. It needs an inflexive that let him let him process all that happens to the verb. And lastly, verbs that are not pronominals receive the morpheme se. For example, to emocionar se, conmover se, enternecer se. And some examples of it are nos emocionamos por tu visita. That is voice, because the action is performed by the subject on the subject. Well, that was all for the video. I hope you have learned about passive and active voice in English and Spanish, and thank you for watching. Remember, my name is Julián Diettes.